Parker of the U.S. Department of State's Diplomatic Security Service, Special Agent in Charge Diane Upchurch of the FBI, Arkansas Attorney General Leslie Rutledge, the Benton County Prosecuting Attorney's Office, and of course to Chief Mike Peters for his help today with this press conference. Everybody standing behind me was instrumental in this case today. Last night, U.S. Marshals arrested Paul Petersen on 19 felony counts that detail how, for the last several years, Mr. Petersen not only created a scheme to engage in illegal adoptions, but to profit from them as well. This indictment coincides with similar charges being brought against Mr. Petersen in both the state of Arizona and Utah. Though Mr. Petersen resides in Arizona, he routinely practices law in Arkansas. Our investigation has revealed that since 2014, Mr. Petersen used his law license and his legal expertise to prey not only upon the women of the Marshall Islands, but on many innocent families here in Arkansas that wanted nothing more but to add to their family. In order to effectuate this scheme, Mr. Petersen enticed and misled several women from the Marshall Islands to illegally travel to the United States in order to give birth and then immediately give their babies up for adoption before returning home. As part of the scheme, Mr. Petersen lied to these mothers, instructed the mothers to lie not only to custom officials, but to the Arkansas courts. On multiple occasions, Mr. Petersen knowingly submitted fraudulent documents to the Arkansas courts in order to disguise the illegality of these adoptions and to inflate the cost of the adoptions. Mr. Petersen used multiple bank accounts, both in Arizona and Arkansas, to try to conceal this scheme. Our investigation uncovered that while Mr. Petersen was engaging in over $1 million of wire transactions during the course of this scheme, it was not uncommon for a dozen of Marshallese mothers on the verge of giving birth to be confined to a single family dwelling here in Northwest Arkansas. It's not uncommon for up to 4 of those expecting mothers to be confined in a single room. Some expecting mothers were forced to sleep on the floors. Immediately after giving birth and completing the adoption process, those same mothers were immediately returned to the Marshall Islands. Many of these mothers described their ordeal as being treated like property. Make no mistake, this case is the purest form of human trafficking. The United States Attorney's Office for the Western District of Arkansas has a long and detailed mission statement. We have many priorities and objectives, but I cannot think of any more important mission or priority than protecting the less fortunate. And we should be so thankful, and I thank God every day for the people behind me and the organizations that put a stop to this. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Special Agent Andrew Parker. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrew Parker. I'm with the U.S. State Department's Diplomatic Security Service. I'm only going to make some comments today about the Diplomatic Security Service because I think most people probably don't even know what we are. I'll refer all questions about the case to the U.S. Attorney's Office. First, I want to thank our partners both on and off the stage for the tremendous work that everyone has done on this case. It was truly a team effort. The United States Diplomatic Security Service is the federal law enforcement and security arm of the U.S. Department of State. We conduct document fraud investigations worldwide, among other crimes. DSS, Diplomatic Security Service, works closely with U.S., international, and foreign law enforcement and security organizations. Diplomatic Security Service is the most widely represented U.S. law enforcement organization in the world, with a presence in more than 170 countries and in 29 U.S. cities. Due to our close and long-standing relationship with the Marshallese, we were able to investigate this egregious crime. Our presence at our Hot Springs resident office allowed us to work with our federal, state, and local partners to investigate this global adoption fraud case. This is an ongoing investigation and we cannot provide additional comments. We refer to you to the Department of Justice for additional information. Thank you.
Hi, Hi, good afternoon. I'm Diane Upchurch, Special Agent in Charge for the FBI in Little Rock Field office. First and foremost, I want to thank you all for being here today. This is a very important day for us. Human trafficking is a serious violation, and we see it in all forms. It's whether it's child sex trafficking or labor trafficking. And for the FBI, we work it under a couple different programs. For instance, our child sex trafficking is worked under our Violent Crimes Against Children Innocence Lost initiative, and our human labor trafficking is under a civil rights program. But human trafficking is like Dak mentioned, a horrific crime. And I'm very proud of the FBI employees who work this, and also our true partnership with DSS. And I certainly want to thank the Marshallese government and the Consul General there for all of their assistance, as well as the U.S. Ambassador in the Marshall Islands. Certainly the U.S. Attorney's Office has been a huge supporter of us as well, and the AG's office, thank you for your help in this, your assistance and support. And as we all stand up here, we definitely want to stress the importance of investigating and prosecuting these individuals involved with human trafficking. They're doing it all over the country. We've seen an increase in numbers of our cases in human trafficking. We don't know if that's because there's a greater awareness of human trafficking being out there, or if it's simply there is an increase in it. Regardless, we do want our people to come forward, any victims to please come forward and talk to any state, local, federal officials, law enforcement officials, so we can put an end to it. And if I could, certainly the last people I want to thank are the victims who had the strength and bravery to come forward and talk with us about this. Without their help, these charges would not be possible. So we certainly want to thank our victims for all that they did for us. So thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Attorney General Leslie Rutledge, and it's an honor to stand here with other members of law enforcement, and as we commend the work of our Department of Justice on this case, on this investigation. It is imperative that we all work together at the local, state, and federal level to root out the sort of dangers involved in crimes with regard to human trafficking and taking advantage of taxpayers, particularly when these actions involve individuals because of their financial status, their inability to communicate through language barriers, and not being able to understand our laws. We must always work together and make sure that everyone is protected, and particularly those victims, those young children, and those individuals who fell into this scheme by Mr. Petersen. So it is an honor to work collaboratively with the Department of Justice, and I commend our U.S. Attorney of the Western District, Dak Kees, for his efforts, and the FBI for their efforts as well. So thank you.
Again, I want to thank everyone that's up here. The agencies represented, their work was outstanding, and it was imperative to bringing this man to trial. With that, I'd like to open it up to questions. Doug?
Sir, you said that there was deception involved, both of the Marshallese women involved and the courts and such. Was there any coercion? There was bad treatment that you described, but was there any coercion involved in any of these cases?
Coercion's a funny word. Yes, there was coercion. They were the women were instructed to lie. Once they got over here, they were pretty much at the I want to say beck and call, but they're pretty much Mr. Petersen at that moment in time controlled what they were going to do and when they were going to do it. So physical coercion, I don't know if I would go that far, but yes, there was coercion involved.
I guess a better way to phrase that question, was there ever any opportunity for any of these people to say, no, I don't want to do this, I want to go home?
I have an answer to your question. I don't think I want to comment on that at the right time of what witnesses may testify to. So sorry for that.
Also apologize for not identifying myself, Doug Thompson, Northwest Arkansas District.
We know who you are. Yes, ma'am.
Joe Ellison with 5 Years. Just wondering how many adoptions did Mr. Petersen do? How much money was made from this?
Though we only charged these specific adoptions, the investigation revealed it's probably in the hundreds. I think in the last 2 years, it was 66 adoptions, so roughly, 30 to 35 adoptions a year. Again, that's only a 2-year perspective. Again, our investigation revealed that he charged different amounts, but on average, he would charge the adoptive families roughly $40,000, and these women got 10 or less, so he pretty much pocketed the rest. So hundreds of adoptions and a nice little penny on each one of them. Yes, sir. I can tell you this came to light in Arkansas in this district because the local bar, members of the local bar came and informed our office that something wasn't right with the way this gentleman was doing business. And that led to us opening a file on this. As far as other states, I can tell you that both Arizona and Utah have opened up state charges. They have state charges against Mr. Petersen, though Arkansas has the only federal charges. We're the only federal district to file charges.
Then how do things go forward from here, sort of the order of march?
Okay. So right now, Mr. Petersen is in custody in Arizona. That's where he resides, is in custody in Arizona. My office has filed a writ, which basically it is a request. We have requested that the U.S. Marshals go out and pick him up and appear before our federal judge. I believe it's October 29th of this year. We will confirm that before, but I believe it's October 29th of this year. He will appear before our magistrate. Yes, ma'am.
What happens with the families that adopted these children? Do these children stay with the families that adopted them, or?
Well, that is the million-dollar question. Yes, as of right now, I want to make perfectly clear that at this point, we have uncovered no evidence, nothing to suggest that any adoptive parents or adoptive family in Arkansas has engaged in any misconduct, was aware of this scheme, knowingly engaged in this scheme. Up until this point, there's no evidence. Also, up until this point, we have not contacted or been in contact with any Marshallese mother who wants her child back. It looks like the evidence suggests that they wanted to go through the adoption process. They were just lied about the legality of it and were coerced into continuing that lie. So as of right now, there's no evidence that we see. There's no Marshallese citizen who is asking for their babies to be returned. So I want the families of Arkansas to understand that as of right now, no one's going to be knocking on their door asking for their baby back. Yes, ma'am.
Do you know if these women would already be pregnant, or would they be asked to conceive a child? This is still an ongoing investigation. The evidence that we have now is these women were already pregnant and were approached because they were pregnant. It's still an ongoing investigation. We may find out different, but that's what we have right now. Yes, sir.
Can you talk about the compact of free association and then the citing section that these folks appear to be allegedly in violation?
So basically what we have is the United States has a treaty with the Marshall Islands, and it, not to give a history lesson, but the treaty came out of the testing, nuclear testing that we did with the Marshall Islands. Is because of that, we have a treaty in which citizens of the Marshall Islands can freely come into the United States without passports or visas or without the normal administrative hurdles. The provision in the compact says they cannot come into the United States for the sole purpose of having a baby for an adoption. That is specifically prohibited within the compact. What Mr. Petersen did was, knowing, and there is evidence to suggest that he knew that the compact exists, he knew the law, that he intentionally lied and asked the women to lie to not only customs officials but to our courts that they did not come here for the sole purpose of an adoption. So that's kind of the brief history lesson of the compact and why that provision is so important in this case. Yes, ma'am.
So the adoptions themselves were legal? No, the adoptions were illegal. And the reason why the adoptions were illegal is when opening up an adoption file in the state of Arkansas, a lawyer must submit certain affidavits, certain documentation to the court of the legality. And Mr. Petersen lied. He basically lied. He submitted those false documents to the court. So we have evidence that the judges in the state of Arkansas would not have gone forward with those adoptions had A, they been told the truth, or they had known that these women were here in violation of the compact.
Does that put in jeopardy any of the parents who adopted children? Do
Well,
they have to do anything different?
as of right now, no. But again, there is no natural mother coming in saying the adoption was illegal. I want to undo it. I want my child back. So even though the foundation of the adoption was not legal, we don't have anyone right now challenging it. Yes, sir.
Is either the Marshall Islands or the state of Arkansas going to be interested in a crime on this, in y'all's knowledge?
Well, that is a possibility. I can tell you, we have been working with both Benton County and Washington County Prosecuting Attorney's Office, understanding that there are state charges there. We, the federal government, are going to take this case first, and then after that, the state it will be up to the state to determine if they want to file charges. But make no bones about it, the federal government's got first crack at this.
Okay. Somebody else has got one.
Yes, sir.
Can you talk about the amount of money that was involved here? I understand that it's a considerable sum that's passed through a variety of hands. And can you talk about those hands?
So basically what the law prohibits any person for enticing a woman to enter into an adoption. So Mr. Petersen cannot give these biological mothers money. He can't. So what he did was he used a third person. He took the money, he wired it to the third person, and then that third person then, unaffiliated with Mr. Petersen, then gave the birth mothers money. So that was the scheme in order for him to stay out of it. And therein lies the money laundering and the fraud. Yes, sir.
Does that have any relation? We had a gentleman, forgive me for forgetting his name, arrested in the Marshall Islands, such as that. Does this have any relationship to that case?
It does. It does. That's all I can say about that, but it does.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I was just wondering, so I know you said that he was using a third party person to find these women, but how did they come in contact with them?
How did he and the third person meet?
Yeah, find these women.
Roughly 15 years ago, he did the adoption for that third person, and that's how they met. And then after that adoption, that's when the relationship started, and then he basically employed her.
Okay, I gotta ask, is the guy arrested in the Marshall Islands, the third person?
No. The third person is mentioned. The third person, I will give you her name. I want to make sure that I do not butcher it here.
Okay.
The third person is Maki Takahisa.
The one mentioned in the indictment.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, that is the third person. So basically, Maki lived here in Arkansas, and so Mr. Petersen had bank accounts in Arizona where he lived. He had bank accounts here in Arkansas as well as Maki. So what he would do is, after the adoption, he would wire money from his bank accounts in Arizona to Arkansas. Maki would then take the money out of those banks and then give them to the women. Therefore, the enticement, the money for the adoption that was to go to the birth mothers did not come directly from him. So that's how he used a third person in order to be shielded from the scheme.
And was Mikey housing these women?
Yes, that's also part of the scheme. When I mentioned that he would submit false documents to inflate the expenses, as part of the adoption, a lawyer will submit to the court the expenses that were incurred, and those expenses could be medical expenses, they could be housing, they could be food. And so what happened is these women were actually being housed with Maki or Maki's family with no expenses. There was no money there. But Mr. Petersen would then submit to the court exaggerated or even just fictitious amounts for both housing and food and whatnot. So that's where he was lying to the court again to get money that was not due him.
And Jeanette Lindwood, how is she associated with?
I'm not going to comment on that. Yes, ma'am.
And as far as
I'm sorry, I can't.
That happened all through, like, hospitals and doctors, like, all that happened in hospitals? Like,
I'm sorry. What was the
as
question?
far as the pregnancies, all the mothers gave birth in hospitals here.
Yes, yes. The ones that we are alleging in the indictment. Yes, the birth was here in Arkansas.
Were they all successful? Did we have any serious medical conditions involved in any of them?
Not to my knowledge. No. Yes, ma'am.
How did they find the women that they then coerced into?
Maki is a citizen of both Japan and the Marshall Islands, so Maki was instrumental in that, and they had associates in the Marshall Islands as well. Yes, sir.
If the defendant, if Mr. Petersen is found guilty on all counts, we talk about the sentencing guidelines might suggest that he's facing terms of years or fines.
Sure, I can tell you that. I was expecting you to ask that question. So understand this is the maximum possible sentence if he is found guilty on everything, and the judge, what we call stack the charges. He is looking at 315 years in prison and a $5 million fine. Again, that is the maximum possible sentence. We've not even had a trial here, so that is if he's found guilty on everything.
315?
315. 315. Any other questions?
How long did the investigation take?
Investigation was almost close to 3 years. Yes, ma'am.
Are you looking to see if the attorney was working with anybody else, or?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
He does have at least a mailing address for his law firm, and I believe a paralegal working here. Is she?
I'm not going to comment on specific individuals out there.
Are you expecting more charges against other individuals?
Absolutely. More charges, more indictments, more defendants.
In
Are we expecting more charges? And the answer is yes, more defendants and more charges.
the same scheme or in similar activities by other individuals who aren't necessarily associated with this?
Both.
I know you touched on this a little bit. Those families, will they have to reapply all of their adoption paperwork?
That is a question of state law. To be honest with you, I have not heard that they will. That will be a state issue, and I don't know that. I don't know. That would be pure speculation. I hope not, but I don't know.
Last question? Anyone?
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. I do appreciate it.